Taylor Young, former Baylor linebacker, and he is in high school or coaching high school football up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. And he joins us now on 365 Sports with Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoke. Taylor, thanks for your time. As a former player, and you had been a part of a couple of teams that struggled because of the change, the transition of coaching, but Baylor right now is struggling. What do you see when you have a chance to watch them?
To be honest, I see a lot of small mistakes that I believe to be fixed. But honestly, effort. It's really effort. And just overall, just like the small things about just running to the ball, finishing tackles, but just on our defensive side of the ball. And just actually like they're doing their assignment to the best of their ability. That's just all I see. I just believe it's the small things.
How much do the small things improve when you play with confidence? Because, Taylor, it just seems to me that the last year or so, they're not playing very confident.
No doubt. I mean, I see the same thing, but confidence is really everything. So I'm never playing football. You know what I mean? Like if you don't have confidence, then it's hard to play fast because you're always questioning things and you're questioning your assignments. You questioning is if I should have this type of, like if I'm spilling or if I'm boxing or if I have this route or if I have that route. So just having your confidence is everything in football, man.
Taylor, do you see some young guys that can be big-time players given another year or two? And just what's that process like of trying to get those young guys and extract the most that you can out of them? How do you try to go about, getting them that confidence earlier and ramping them up like that?
Honestly, man, just going back to step one, like really like with young guys, I think it's a mentality deal, just introducing them to what great study habits look like, introducing them what the extra work looks like, and just changing their mentality of, hey, I'm here, I've made it till I haven't done anything yet. I haven't made a name for myself yet. I need to be grinding all the time to be better. Like, I mean, football is really all about stacking days. Like just stacking days on top of each other, being better than you were the previous day. And if you could change your mentality that way, then I believe things will start slowly changing.
What are your thoughts on the ups and downs? You went through that when you were at Baylor. The ups and downs, the changes, and can you kind of feel for the team? But this is year 4 for Dave Aranda, although the COVID year kind of is one of those with an asterisk.
No doubt. It's like for me right now, it's two things that are going to happen, especially when the things feel like they're all going bad. First off, you got to figure out who's steering the ship. And I'm not talking about Coach Aranda or anything like that, but just as far as in the locker room, what type of leaders do you have? Because there's two things that can happen in that locker room. That's either you're going to fight or it's like you're going to fold. And, honestly, it depends on who's leading because it's easy to just give up whenever things aren't going, it's like your way. And it's all about who's leading that team and who's going out trying to get better day in and day out and having hard physical practices. You know what I mean? And everybody just being into getting better.
Taylor Young,
it's a culture thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Taylor, you went through that year, the 1-11 year. You guys had that great game against Oklahoma. How did you feel the build, even though you weren't winning games? Did you feel the things building and gelling together after all you guys had been through?
That whole year was tough. You know what I mean? With just all the changes and all the different, still having talent, but it being used in a different type of way. Because our rosters were different. It was all about speed with Coach Browse and everything else. And Coach Rule, he wanted to be physical. Well, he didn't have the tools to do that at first. And so honestly, shoot, it's those small things that you just gotta. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're all good, man.
Yeah. No.
Can you ask the question for me again?
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, just going back based on what you said, that year was really difficult. How did you then come through it, with all the different things were going on?
Well, honestly, you just got to continue to fight. continue to fight and making sure everybody's on board. And if they're not, like, address it. Just addressing it. That's really the main thing. Addressing the issues and being able to build on something and have a goal. Okay, goals might change in the season, but having a goal and say, hey, let's get better at this. Let's figure out what we're doing wrong, and let's get better at these small things. And eventually you'll start building into something.
Taylor, as the losing streak continued on, and that's what they're kind of in the midst of. I mean, they're looking at 1-11 right now themselves. You mentioned leadership, you mentioned coaching the plan, but how do you look at this team, and how do you think that they, stay the course, even if the losses continue to pile up? I mean, because it's one thing to see the long game, but man, every week it's another loss, it's another loss. Just how did you deal with that personally, and how did y'all deal with that as a team?
Well, yeah, like I said, it's all about the leadership. And like at that time, I was the leader of that team, and my mentality personally is like giving everything I got all the time, no matter what. And so you have to have that mentality pouring throughout the team. Okay, things are going our way. All right, our starting quarterback is hurt, but what does that have to do with you? You know what I mean? Like that has nothing to do. Like you can't control that. You can only control yourself and what you bring to the table. And so that's honestly something that I still take with me. And like I try to pour that into anybody that I'm coaching or I'm teaching. It's like, well, what are you doing personally to be the best that you can be? Because all that other stuff that's happening around you, you have no control over. And so I just keep that in mind and just try to just tell people that, and hopefully they're doing that same thing.
Devin Lemire, who was one of the few that came up and like hammered somebody during the game, not that there weren't other tackles, but after the game, he expressed a lot of like what I thought was incredibly a very sincere frustration. And one of the things he brought up, Taylor, was the lack of players being accountable or within the locker room. So people can discuss the coaching staff, they can put players in position, they can deal with injuries, etc. But what happens when you don't have, or it appears as if there's a frustration on players like basically being accountable themselves?
Like that comes from leadership. Like that comes from like addressing it head on, addressing the situations head on, addressing your teammates head on, and calling those guys out. And understanding what's our way, and do your personal habits align with our way, or are you going against us? And like that's pretty much the main thing. Is like you got to figure out where's the ship being steered to. Now, are you helping out this ship, or are you constantly putting holes in it when anybody isn't looking? Like nobody's looking, and so you got to figure that out. And so honestly, like the best way to do it is just address it head on. And so sometimes that's uncomfortable in a locker room, but at the end of it all, you can come out more healthy.
Taylor, we kind of brought up the Oklahoma game in passing. I heard you chuckle a little bit. We've actually got a poster here at the studio of your hit on Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
And, I'm just curious, how often does that still get brought up, or do you end up seeing that picture? And is that, would you say, of like you made so many plays, you were a part of so many great teams, but is that like at the top of the pile of like encapsulate Taylor Young's career, and it would be a picture of that hit on Baker Mayfield?
I mean, no doubt. Only in the reason why it is because I'm not going to take because he was a great player,
right.
and that was something that I want to put out there. He was a great competitor and a hard nosed type of guy. So I want to put that out there. But no doubt about it, it's one of my most memorable moments, especially with a tough season. Especially if you're going through a tough season like we did. So I feel like it's just the epitome of who I am. Okay, well, we're 0-4, we're 0-3 or whatnot. And just continue to play with everything that I have. So, no doubt about it.
Taylor, that was, I mean, you can show that video as like the perfect way to hit a quarterback and not get caught. I mean, no penalty. It was just straight through perfect tackle.
No. Yep, it didn't feel like anything, which is the perfect hit.
So when you hit it, you just felt like you were going straight through.
Straight through a thin piece of paper.
That picture, which is frozen in time, You see the cleats that are shredded on the field in the air. You see like tape on every parts of your body. It is a violent and yet clean hit. Did Baker Mayfield say anything to you after that hit?
Not after that hit. No, it was one. I want to say the drive before that I gave it to him. That was real bad, and and it knocked the air out of him for a little bit. But I can tell you, just the competitor who he is, man, he hopped right back up and act like nothing happened, and kept going.
Yeah,
so honestly, like that's who he is. So hey.
Yeah, and it's proven out. He's still, hanging around. Saw him on Monday Night Football just a couple of days back, and he's still doing his thing and still being a fighter out there. So Taylor, they're not going to play Oklahoma this year. They just played Texas for the final time. As a guy who played in the Big 12, what are your thoughts on not seeing a Baylor team line up against an OU or a Texas and just kind of all the changes? What do you make of that as a former player?
Man, those games were important, and just getting ready to play those games, like it meant a lot because you knew a lot of people were going to look or were going to check that game out. So, those are really important as a player. I feel like not having them in the conference, man, it's going to be a sad day, but just all the new type of talent, it's like that's coming through, I believe it'll be okay. So, with just guys like Utah, Houston and stuff like that, like those are guys, like they're not as big, but it's still big names and it's something that's different. So,
what is it like to be a player and the coaching staff is taking heat?
Man, it just depends on what type of player you are, it's names that aren't there anymore, but because Casazada, it's one thing he talked about was just control what you can control. You know what I mean? Like, but because they're taking heat, they're taking heat because we're not winning. It's like they're taking heat because some people aren't doing their job, So just control what you can control and try your best not to think about it and just dive into your craft. That's one of the, man, you got to dive into your craft when all this outside stuff is happening. You have no control over it. So it's tough. No doubt it's tough because people are talking about you on campus.
Mm-hmm.
Fans aren't being fans, like they're honestly talking about how bad you look or, what needs to change. And honestly, none of that matters to you personally as a player. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to keep getting better. Or you can let it affect you and now you're stressing about things that you really have no control over. So it just depends.
Taylor Young, former Baylor linebacker, with us on 365 Sports. Had you ever been during that time when everything was just not working well in 16? Did you ever have to kind of like calm another player down that might have been barking a little bit too much? Did you ever have those kind of moments without, and you don't have to mention the players, but because we all, three of us, remember. We weren't in the locker room, but we remember that was tough times.
No doubt. Especially 2016 when I believe the head coach is Grove. That was just with all the outside noise. It was definitely hard. It was definitely hard to hear, especially with people who were younger, who didn't have nothing to do with the stuff that was going on, which a lot of us didn't. But I'm like we had some personalities on the team that needed to be checked. And we had to figure out what was going on. And it was a lot for everybody, players and coaches, And so the main thing is supposed to be football. It became something else. So, as coaches, it's up to us as coaches to keep football the main thing at all times, no matter what's happening outside. And so, that was just something that I believe that we lacked. But we did try to check it at the end. I believe we came together at the end.
Yeah.
Kept on playing hard, so.
Won the bowl game and against Boise State. Can you reflect back, and there was so much turmoil because of the change and also the publicity, the negativeness of what was going on with people, everything. I mean, you as a Baylor football player, no matter what kind of a great young man you were like you were a demon. You were bad because you were on the team that had so much attention. Can you kind of reflect back after the Texas game? I know there was a lot of controversy before that game, and it was a very tough ending. Did everything, in your opinion, did it just fall apart after that?
Well, I can say this, man, that I remember like it was yesterday because, man, like that was something that was big happening. But it fell apart pre-Texas game, like the night before. So whenever that big article came out was when I believe things started falling apart. I don't know all the factuals about that, so I'm not going to speak on it like on radio. But it was a lot of misinformation that was put out there in that. But like whenever that came out, I believe football was no longer the main thing, and like that's really what I could say to what really happened with the season after that.
We have Phil Bennett on every Monday, and we know and
you just explained it perfectly. By the way, you didn't say a lot, but you didn't need to. Like that made all the sense in the world. We got you there.
He obviously tried to keep that thing together too. Coach Grove did everything he could. Give us something about Phil Bennett, who loved you to death, recruited you. You had to go through the recruitment, always not large enough, tall enough, whatever. He loved you. He also knew Dat Win, among others. We'll run something with him on Monday the next time he joins us. Give us your just overall view of what you think of Phil Bennett.
Well, I worked with him too as well in North Texas.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I want to say he's an amazing boss. He's an amazing boss. But man, he's hard nosed and he's a truth teller. That's what I like to tell. That's what I like to say. He's a truth teller, and he's gonna say whatever he thinks he needs to tell you to get you to play at your highest level. And as a young guy, just being criticized and stuff like that, like it can shut you down. But what he's trying to build you into, like that criticism right there, should honestly make you go harder. And so whenever you finally shed that skin, like that soft skin that you had, and you become somewhat of a man, like you'll start taking that criticism and knowing that I need to go harder. And so, man, Coach Bennett, like he molded a lot of young men throughout time, coaching probably 40 plus years, like just molding guys into becoming who they are and becoming confident young men. And I can just appreciate like that. That's a guy who, like if I get married, I'm gonna make sure he's at my wedding. He took a chance on me when nobody did. Nobody. Even though, I was All-American 5A Player of the Year in high school, So he wasn't just taking just a chance. I'm just saying.
Right.
I was just short.
There's truth serum. What you just said is exactly what you're right. You were an incredible player and at DeSoto High School. Did all of those years at Baylor, how did that, through the thick and the thin, through the high, the exhilarating, and also the worst of times, how did that mold you?
Man, I said this a lot just playing wise because my dad always mentioned it just growing up. But adversity causes some to break and some to break records. And I feel like I'm still living life and I'm going through life like I'm ready to break records. And I've been through a lot of adversity. And, those are just things that has happened. Those are things that are going to happen in life. You just got to keep pushing through, especially if you think you're trying to be great. Like if you're trying to be great, you can't let those small hurdles get in the way of like your true greatness, I guess. But yeah, just throughout all that, man, just keep hopping hurdles and keep going forward and putting the right foot down and putting your left foot down after that. Just keep moving.
Taylor, I have to ask you this. This is like separate from a lot of stuff we've been talking about, but how much did uniforms matter to you players? Like, how excited did you get for, hey, we're wearing the all black or we're wearing the chrome gold? Because there's a lot of debate. Fans wanted a blackout last week. They don't have black uniforms, this and that. But, did that matter to you or to other players? Or is that something that genuinely, got you guys jacked up and ready to play at an even higher level?
Man, well, that all black is that's something different. You mean business whenever you put that all black on. But just no doubt, I remember playing ball and having them gold chrome helmets, which we were probably one of the first teams to have. Just saying, but for putting those gold helmets on, like they definitely did something to us, like having that uniform. But like, you know, the all gold and the all green and the all white was cool with Coach Rule, because Coach Rule was a hard-nosed, physical type. Like everything about him was that, and I felt like that was okay. But this roster here seems to be a little bit more flashy, a little bit, you know, with a little bit more speed guys, and not necessarily just pound. I wouldn't mind seeing something different, and I know the players would too, and the recruits would as well.
Taylor, I know that there was a little Twitter back and forth with some former teammates about making a comment about Matt Rule at Nebraska compared to what it was like for Kedrick, and I know you guys love each other, about the time, about how he basically, it appeared as if he was trying to say that he broke you guys. But you came back pretty quickly along with a couple of others. Did you talk to Kedrick, and what really – how you could explain what he was trying to say, and in return, your response?
No doubt. You know that I can tell it was some truth in that statement that he had there. So I'm not going to totally discredit it. But like what I am going to say is that a lot of that stuff did happen. A lot of guys did have concussions and whatnot, but a lot of that stuff happened to guys that didn't really want to play ball for Coach Rule as well, you know, but or didn't really go with the value with what Coach Rule was trying to do. And, you know, so some of those guys are my friends. Like I can say that Kedrick is my friend, and Kedrick thrived in that atmosphere, and he loved Coach Rule. You know, like that was one thing about it. Yeah, like, you know, a lot of that stuff, like you coming from a roster that was built off speed, built off running tempo offense, and then trying to switch it within a year of trying to be a pound type of offensive team, or really a good defensive whole front, like the defensive being the main priority. Practices change. You start being a little bit more physical. You start having periods that's 9-on-7 for more than 10 minutes. You start changing the mentality of your linebackers instead of two-gapping things where we're going to run through somebody's neck. You know, that type of stuff, you know, like those guys talk about it, but they also equipped us with the different things that you can do to make sure that you don't go through those things. Like they want us to lift extra weights. They wanted us to do like they put neck exercises into our, you know, our lifting program. You know, like they gave us the tools to get better. And as you can see, 3 years down the line, it worked. You know, there's like 12 of those guys. Of course, they end up graduating with Aranda, but it's like 12 of those guys, 10 to 12 that's still in the league or floating around somewhere. So, like, you know, like the chef worked. You know, like his stuff works. You know, and the guys that didn't really like it, I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound like I'm being a hard ass or whatnot. I'm sorry, excuse me.
That's okay.
Hard or what? But they were soft. A lot of that stuff they didn't really want to deal with the day in and the day out of being physical. I had to get over it because that wasn't something I was used to. So, you know, like when Browse was there, we never took each other to the ground. So, you know, it's just stuff that you got to get used to and adapt.
Yeah, different coaching staff, different philosophies. One won a lot, and then one was able to turn around a disastrous year through a tough time and won too.
No doubt.
Taylor, you're with Richardson ISD. Are you coaching at an intermediate school, or are you at a high school? Where are you right now?
I'm at Richardson High. I'm the special teams coordinator here. You know, we just got a new head coach here, Coach Holloway, which he came from Richardson Berkman. He was the offensive coordinator there last year. So we're honestly just building a program up that has been down for a long time. And, like, when we're enjoying it, we're 3-2 right now. Last year, like, we went 3-7. So it's a big deal for us just to be out here trying to change the culture.
Use the example and the experience you have of being a part of that turnaround when you were at Baylor. People in the chat saying that they have learned quite a bit. Very interesting. A lot of what we discussed and your truth serum from what you learned from Phil Bennett. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time, and we hope to see you soon.
No doubt. All right, now, thank you.
Taylor
This is
Young,
good.
Richardson High School, now a special teams coach, and that was an